All right. What's up, everybody? This is going to be episode 3 on our ASM video series, how to go from a complete noob to a veteran ASM coder. In episode 2, we briefly talked about the glossary and how you can use the glossary thread to help you out with unknown terms and whatnot. And then we also talked about the ever so important simplified cheat code intro/tutorial, which went over a lot of beginner stuff. Went over memory, types of memory, bytes, half words, words, format of basic compiled codes, and going over some examples and whatnot, and how to navigate in memory. So today we're going to talk about filling in XYZ values. So in the previous episode we talked about controller lines, and I showed you they had X values to fill in, Y values, and Z values, and what they represent. So we're going to go on this how to fill XYZ values for cheat codes thread. Alright, and we're going to start off with a basic code. It's going to be the NTSCU of the tag name modifier code, but set up to remove the tag name. A list of X, Y, and Z values can be found in this thread here. So in this thread, as already known X and Z values, along with showing you how to do briefly, just really concise, how to do the Y values, but it's better explained in the tutorial designated to how to fill in all those values. Because memory is different for every version of MKW, the controller addresses for each controller is going to vary per version. As you can see, we'll have our listings for NTSCU, then they vary for PAL, then they vary for Japan and Korea. We're not going to worry about these special values right here. And then we're going to go right to the Z values. Now the good thing about Z values is it doesn't matter. They're region free, they're version free. They're the same regardless of what version of MKW you are using. However, they differ per controller. You'll have Z values for GCN. Wavebird, WeWheel, and Chuck are the only two controllers that share the same Z values. And then we have the Classic. Okay. And then the Y values, if you look here, this is just a brief explanation of how to do the Y values. Y equals all null, all zeros. If you have to just press that button and you cannot press anything else. And then a simple equation, now this is a hexadecimal equation of FFFF minus the button value will equal the Y value. Okay, so let's go to our remove tag name code. We see we have two controller lines in here. Paste that for you. This will be this is what the code's going to activate, is this word RAM write, and it's going to deactivate. Plug in the compiled default instruction back into that memory address at 8088A4414. As you can see, the halfway terminators and final terminators are there. Okay, so the X values. Now this is NTSCU code, right? For this example, we're going to work with GCN. So we'll go back to our thread, scroll up, and we need GCN controller for NTSCU. We see that port 1 is 3E80, so we're going to plug that in. And it wouldn't make sense to deactivate a code with a different controller now, would it? So this is why the XXXX values are going to be the same for both the controller line that activates the code and deactivates the code. Alright, now moving on to the Z values. As mentioned before, they're region free. It doesn't matter what version you're using. For this code, we'll use the start button. I might differ a little bit from what the tutorial on the side is doing, but it doesn't matter. Start button for GCN controller, 1080, right? Right. Let's deactivate the code with the Y button. Okay, pretty simple enough. Now, you have two options to how you want these button activators and deactivators to be utilized in the game. Do you want it required to where if the user presses the button, does he have to make sure he's not pressing any other buttons at that particular moment in time? Or is he allowed to press other buttons while pressing the button that activates/deactivates the code. Now we're going to go with the first option, where you're not allowed to press any other buttons. Well, this is simple. You just plug in 0. You plug in null for both y values, and you're done. You just took a code you found on the forum. Now it works for you if you want it to work this way. Now let's say if you want it to work the other way, to where you can press other buttons and manipulate other things on the controller while activating and deactivating the code. Well, we're going to need a hex equation. So we're going to apply that hex equation. The FFFF minus the button value equals the y value. Obviously, as described in episode 2, all compiled code, all memory is all in hexadecimal. So this equation is going to be a hexadecimal equation. Now, I already know the result of this, but what you want to do is you want to find a website that has a hex calculator. I think I use the one called calculator.net. They have a page for their hex calculator, really good, because some hex calculators are iffy. They won't do certain equations correct, or at least correct in the sense for what we want to manipulate in Mario Kart Wii for, Wii cheat code purposes. So if you're not sure which one to pick, if you don't already have a favorite hex calculator bookmarked, use the one on calculator.net. So we're going to use our equation, FFFF minus 10080 equals EF7F. That would be our first y value. Let me just plug in these little y placeholders right here so it gives you a visual representation before we fill in the next one. Do the next one. And that equals, if you plug it into your hex calculator, F77F. Once you get good enough with hex, or you can just start memorizing whatever values you tend to use. Like I always use GCN. Me personally, I like the Korean game, and I like to use the start button and the Y button for various activation and deactivation of codes. So this is how I memorize all that. And there's more even tips and tricks of figuring out these hex equations without even needing a darn calculator. So there you go. This is how you would fill in X, Y, and Z values. Let's see if I forget anything else. No, not really. And obviously, if you have let's say we change this code. Let's say you had this, an off-on switch, which we talked about in episode 2. Well, the start button right here, while being able to press other buttons, is the same button used for activating and deactivating. Okay, so this was episode 3, how to fill in X, Y, and Z values in an already compiled finished code. Let's say you're browsing a code on a code forum and you see it has those and you need to fill them in. Now you know how to fill them in. In episode 4, we're going to talk about creating activators and deactivators on a code that does not have them by default. Alright guys, thanks for watching.